Want to know which American cars from the 70s were faster than you think? You might be surprised by these speedsters. So here are 15 fastest American cars from the 1970s that you probably never knew about. Number 15, 1971, Plymouth GTX 446 barrel. Not every fast car from the 1970s became famous. While cars like the Chevel and Mustang stayed popular, the 1971 Plymouth GTX 440+6 quietly showed incredible speed and power without much attention. It was one of the last muscle cars to stay fast, even as new rules were forcing other cars to slow down. The 1971 GTX wasn't just fast, it also had style. Built on a midsize Chrysler platform, it had a curvy new fuselage body that gave it a bold, wide look. Even though the wheelbase was shortened by 1 inch, the rear track was stretched by 3 inches, which made the car feel more stable on the road. Inside, it had new bucket seats and dash controls that made it more comfortable for the driver and easier to see. Most muscle cars from this time had to lower their horsepower, but the GTX didn't. The standard engine was a 440 cubic inch V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, giving it 370 horsepower. That was only a little less than the earlier models. The 440+6 versions were even stronger, using 3 2-barrel carburetors to make 385 horsepower. The most powerful engine, though, was the 426 cubic inch Hemi, which still made 425 horsepower. The GTX could come with a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic transmission, and both were built for serious speed. The 440+6 models could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.7 seconds and finish the quarter mile in 13.7 seconds at 102 miles per hour. That was faster than many other cars that got more attention. It did gain about 170 pounds, and some drivers said the ride was a bit stiff, but it made up for that with raw power and cool features, like the air grabber hood scoop, which helped send more air into the engine. The axle ratios went up to 4.10 to 1, giving it a strong takeoff. The GTX ended after this year. It went out strong, but like many fast cars of the 1970s, it quietly faded away. Number 14, 1971, Ford Torino Cobra 429 SCJ. The 1971 Ford Torino Cobra was very fast. It could race a quarter mile in 14.5 seconds, reaching a top speed of 102 miles per hour. But for some reason, it never became a famous car. Maybe it got lost among all the other Torino models Ford made that year. In 1971, Ford made a few changes to its cars. They stopped using the Fairlane and Falcon names and focused on the Torino. There were 14 different versions of the Torino. The basic one was called Torino, and it came as a 2-door hardtop, a 4-door sedan, and a 4-door station wagon. A step up was the Torino 500, which had more styles, including a sports roof version. The most comfortable one was the Brougham, and there was also the Torino Squire, a station wagon with extra details. For speed, there were 2 choices, the Torino GT and the Torino Cobra. The GT had a 302 cubic inch engine and a sporty look, but the really fast one was the Cobra. It came with a 351 cubic inch engine, but Ford also offered a 429 cubic inch Cobra jet engine for even more power. However, new engine rules meant the car had a little less power than the year before. One test of a Torino Cobra with a 370 horsepower, 429 Cobra jet engine and automatic transmission showed it could race a quarter mile in 15 seconds at 97 miles per hour. Ford built 326,463 Torinos in 1971, but only 1,613 GT convertibles and 3,054 Cobras were made. Maybe that's why the fast Torino didn't become a big name. It was fast, but not enough people noticed. Number 13, 1973, Pontiac Firebird, Formula 4 55 SD. In the 1970s, muscle cars were starting to lose their power. New rules for emissions made engines weaker, and gas prices were going up. Car companies began focusing more on saving fuel than building fast cars. Most people thought the days of fast street cars were over, but Pontiac did not give up. They made something that shocked everyone, a special version of their Firebird called the Super Duty 455. The 1973 Firebird Trans Am SD 455 could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 5.5 seconds. It could also finish the quarter mile in 13.8 seconds. That speed made it one of the fastest muscle cars of the entire decade, even though it doesn't get much attention today. What made this car different was its engine. The SD 455 was not just a regular big engine. It was carefully built with better parts and more strength inside. It produced 310 horsepower, which was a big deal at a time when most engines were getting weaker. Pontiac worked hard to make sure the engine passed the new emissions tests, and somehow it did. Since it belonged to the regular 455 engine family, it skipped the longer testing process. On February 7, 1973, a test run in California showed what this car could do. Even though it had an automatic transmission and weighed 3,854 pounds, it outran sports cars known for speed. Cars like the Chevrolet Corvette, 454, Porsche 911, and Jaguar F12 could not beat it. The Firebird SD 455 came to life because a few people at Pontiac believed in it. Engineers like Herb Adams, Tom Nell, and Skip McCulley worked against all the doubts from inside General Motors. They gave the engine better airflow, stronger pistons, and a stronger oil system, even though not many people talk about it today. The Firebird SD 455 proved that the muscle car dream was not over. In a time when speed was disappearing, Pontiac gave the world one last blast of power. Number 12. 1970 AMC Rebel Machine. The 1970 AMC Rebel Machine was a fast car. It could reach 60 miles per hour in just 6.8 seconds and cover a quarter mile in 14.4 seconds at 99 miles per hour. It had a lot of speed, but for some reason, it didn't become as famous as other muscle cars of its time. American Motors Corporation, or AMC, was a smaller car company that had to compete against bigger names like Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge. In 1970, AMC introduced the Rebel Machine, a car built for speed with a bold design. It had a 390 cubic inch engine that made 340 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. The car came with a 4-speed manual transmission with a Hurst shifter, and there was also an automatic transmission option. AMC first showed off the Rebel Machine in October of 1969 at a big drag racing event in Dallas, Texas. The first 1,000 cars had a red, white, and blue paint job, while the rest of the 2,326 cars came in other colors. The Rebel Machine stood out, but it still had tough competition from famous cars like the Pontiac GTO, Dodge Charger, and Ford Mustang Mach 1. The Rebel Machine was designed to perform well on the road. It had a suspension system that helped it handle better, with stronger rear coil springs and thicker anti-roll bars. The car also had power-assisted front brakes to help it stop quickly after fast runs. Inside, it had a Hurst shifter, special gauges, and unique trim to match its high-performance style. Even though it had all these great features, AMC didn't sell many of the Rebel machines. The company tried again in 1971 with the Matador machine, which had a 401 cubic inch engine. But by then, car makers were starting to focus more on fuel economy than speed. The Rebel Machine had everything it needed to be a famous muscle car, but it never got the attention it deserved. It was made for speed, but only a few people knew about it. Number 11, 1977 Pontiac CanAm. Most people know famous muscle cars like the Ford Mustang, Dodge Charger, Chevrolet Corvette, and Camaro. But there's one car that people often forget about, even though it was surprisingly fast for its time. This car came out in the year 1977, and Pontiac called it the CanAm. So why don't many people talk about it? Well, Pontiac only made around 1,377 of them. They had planned to make 5,000, but a broken spoiler mold stopped production early, making this car rare. The CanAm was based on the Pontiac Le Mans Sport Coupe, but it had a stronger engine. Most of them came with a 400 cubic inch V8 engine, which was the same engine used in the Trans Am. It made 180 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque. But if you lived in California or high-altitude areas, your CanAm came with an Oldsmobile 403 cubic inch V8 engine. This engine had a little more power with 185 horsepower, but a bit less torque at 320 pound-feet. For speed, the CanAm could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 10 seconds. It could also finish a quarter mile in 17 seconds at 84 miles per hour. These numbers might not seem fast today, but For a 1977 midsize car, that was a solid performance. Many cars from that time had lost some power because of stricter emissions rules, but Pontiac still gave the Can-Am real muscle. Beyond this, every Can-Am had a turbo-hydromatic with 400 automatic transmissions. It had 3 forward gears with ratios of 2.48, 1.48, and 1.00. The rear axle gear ratio was 2.4 to 1, which helped with fuel economy, but it didn't really improve acceleration. Not only this, the Can-Am also had Pontiac's radial tuned suspension, which gave it better handling than most muscle cars from the late 70s. It also had power front disc brakes and rear drum brakes, making it safer to stop. Most of them were painted cameo white with orange, red, and yellow stripes. The interior had 3 options: black, white, or firethorn red. It even had a Grand Prix dashboard, making it feel sportier inside. Even though the Can-Am wasn't the fastest car ever made, it stood out in 1977. But with so few made, many people never got to see one, which is why it remains one of the fastest unknown cars of its time. Number 10. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. The 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 is a true star in the muscle car world. This model was the best version of Oldsmobile's hard work after years of testing and improving their engines. The W30 version of the 442 stood out because of its big 455 cubic inch V8 engine. Unlike the older models, this engine was designed to be more efficient, giving it an impressive 370 horsepower. It was built for power, with a lot of torque and speed that could rival the fastest cars on the road. The 442 W30 wasn't just about the engine. Oldsmobile also focused on making the car lighter to help it go faster. They used special lightweight materials to reduce the car's weight. For example, the hood was made of fiberglass instead of steel, which saved 18 pounds. Other parts, like the intake manifold and the differential carrier, were made from aluminum to help make the car lighter. All these changes helped the car perform even better, especially when paired with the 4-speed manual transmission or the turbo-hydromatic transmission. When it came to speed, the 442 W30 didn't let anyone down. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.7 seconds. That was super fast for a car of its size, especially one with a big engine. In the quarter-mile race, the car finished in 14.2 seconds at 100 miles per hour. Those times made it one of the quickest muscle cars of the time. The W30 package also added some cool features like front disc brakes, sway bars, and special tires. These made the car not just fast, but also stable and easy to control on the road. The W30 version of the 442 was the best version of the car, and its mix of luxury and power made it a true muscle car legend. Even though only 1,542 units with automatic transmissions were made, the 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30 is still remembered for its perfect combination of speed, power, and style. Number 9. 1974 AMC Javelin AMX 401. The 1971 AMC Javelin AMX is a car that many people have different opinions about. Some people think its wide fenders and bold design look strange, while others really like how it stands out. No matter what people think about how it looks, one thing is clear: it was a fast car, and for some reason, it never became as famous as other muscle cars from its time. American Motors Corporation, or AMC, wanted to compete with the Ford Mustang, so they made the Javelin and the AMX. The Javelin was a 4-seater car, while the AMX started as a 2-seater, but later became a high-performance version of the Javelin. In 1971, the Javelin got a new look, with a longer body and a slightly wider frame, which made it look even bigger than before. The standard Javelin came with a 6-cylinder engine, but the AMX only came with V8 engines. The smallest engine was a 304 cubic inch engine with 210 horsepower. The next engine option was the 360 cubic inch engine, which made either 245 or 285 horsepower, depending on the version. The most powerful engine was the 401 cubic inch engine, which made 330 horsepower. This engine had a 4-barrel carburetor, dual exhaust, and a compression ratio of 9.5 to 1. For speed, the 401 engine took about 8 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour and finished the quarter mile in 16 seconds. That was very fast for a car that many people don't talk about today. It also had different transmission options, including a 3-speed manual, a 4-speed manual with a Hurst shifter, and an automatic. In 1972, AMC switched to Chrysler-made automatic transmissions, which were easier to maintain. The Javelin and AMX were made until 1974, with changes each year. Early models had fiberglass hoods with air scoops, but by 1974, all the hoods were flat steel. The interior was sporty, with bucket seats and wraparound dashboards. Some models even had special designs, like the Pierre Cardin edition, which had colorful stripes inside. Even though the Javelin AMX was powerful and fast, it never became as famous as the Mustang or Chevrolet Camaro. But for those who know it, this car was just as exciting and still turns heads today. Number 8. 1973. Ford Gran Torino Sport 429. The 1973 Ford Gran Torino Sport 429 was one of those fast cars that stayed in the background. It had the power, the size, and the style. But for some reason, it wasn't the first car people thought of when talking about fast cars from the 70s. The car had a strong and wide front, with 4 round headlights and a grille that looked like a metal gate instead of a normal car front. The body was smooth, and the 2-door sports roof version was the best looking of all the styles. Inside, the car was big and comfortable, with options for either bench seats or bucket seats. The seats were made from a new kind of vinyl that allowed air to pass through so they didn't trap heat or smell like older vinyl seats. There was also an option for wood-like trim on the dashboard to make it look even better. Now, let's talk about how fast it was. The car had different engine choices, but the 429 cubic inch V8 engine was the most powerful. It made 360 horsepower, which may not seem like a lot compared to other muscle cars, but it had a lot of torque, which made it really fast. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 8 to 10 seconds, and finish a quarter mile in 16 seconds, with a top speed of 130 miles per hour. That made it faster than many other big cars from that time. Driving this car was smooth, and it handled well for its size. It had a strong suspension system that made it feel stable on the road, and Ford even offered a special competition suspension package for people who wanted better handling. The Gran Torino Sport also had front disc brakes, which was a new feature for muscle cars at the time. It was built for both speed and comfort, making it one of the best cars of its time. For some reason, this car never became as famous as others. Maybe it was because muscle cars were starting to lose their popularity, or maybe it was just overlooked. But the 1973 Ford Gran Torino Sport 429 was a fast car that should have been a bigger deal. Number 7. 1970. Buick GSX Stage 1. The 1970 Buick GS 455 Stage 1 had amazing speed and a powerful engine, but it never became as famous as other cars. Part of the reason might be that Buick wasn't thought of as a brand known for making fast cars, even though it created one that could beat many of its rivals. Only 3,776 of these cars were made that year, and out of those, only 479 were the GSX versions. Because of the small number built, it was rare right from the start. But even in its regular version, the GS 455 Stage 1 had some impressive upgrades. Buick made the engine stronger by adding bigger valves, tougher valve springs, a hotter camshaft, and a tuned carburetor. They also included a high-capacity oil pump, better cooling, and a new ignition system to help the spark timing. There were 3 ways to shift the gears in this car: a 3-speed manual, a 4-speed manual with an optional Hurst shifter, or a specially tuned 3-speed automatic for faster shifting. No matter which option was chosen, the car was ready to race. Tests showed just how fast the Buick GS 455 Stage 1 was. In one test, it ran the quarter mile in 13.38 seconds, reaching a top speed of 105 miles per hour. Even with the standard setup, it still ran the quarter mile in 13.8 seconds, at about 101 miles per hour. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds, which was very fast for a car that weighed almost 2 tons. But it wasn't just about speed. The GS 455 also had nice features like power steering, a quiet ride, and bucket seats with extra gauges for those who wanted them. This made it a good car for everyday driving, not just for racing. Even though many people forget about how fast this car was, the Buick GS 455 Stage 1 quietly proved it belonged among the best muscle cars of the 1970s. Number 6. 1971 Dodge Super Bee 440 6-pack. The The 1971 Dodge Super Bee 446-pack was a fast car. Dodge built this car to be all about performance, but for some reason, it wasn't as famous as some of its rivals. This car came with a strong 440 cubic inch V8 engine, which had 3 two-barrel carburetors. It was part of a special package that made the car even quicker than the regular versions. Dodge wanted to give drivers a car built for speed, and they definitely did that. The car also had a lightweight hood with pins to keep it in place instead of regular hinges and latches. It was a small detail, but it showed how serious Dodge was about making the car faster. Now, let's talk about how fast it really was. The Super Bee could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.9 seconds. That was really fast for a car of its size. It could also finish a quarter-mile race in 14.2 seconds. Those numbers put it right up there with some of the fastest muscle cars of its time. The Super Bee wasn't just about speed. It also had a tough, aggressive design that made it stand out. But even with its looks and performance, it never became as well known as some other Dodge cars. Maybe it was because muscle cars were starting to lose their popularity, or maybe it just got lost in the crowd. Whatever the reason, the 1971 Dodge Super Bee 446-pack was a fast car that more people should know about. Number 5. 1970 Chevrolet Chevel 454 SS. In the early 1970s, muscle cars were louder and faster than ever, and one of the loudest was the 1970 Chevrolet Chevel SS 454. This car was not just powerful, it was built for pure speed. Chevrolet put a massive 454 cubic inch V8 engine into the midsize Chevel. This engine, called the LS6, had special parts like solid lifters, a high compression ratio, and one of the highest horsepower ratings ever for a car at the time. The numbers were impressive. The engine made around 450 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. That much power lets the car go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.1 seconds. It could also finish a quarter-mile race in 13.7 seconds, reaching a speed of 103 miles per hour. These numbers made it one of the fastest cars you could buy in the showroom during that decade. Even though it was heavy, the Chevel SS still performed well on the road. It had an upgraded suspension system, so drivers could feel in control while racing through corners or cruising on the highway. Inside, the dashboard was redesigned to look cleaner and sportier, matching the car's powerful style. For serious drivers, Chevrolet offered a 4-speed manual transmission or a special automatic transmission. The car also had axle ratios as high as 4 points, 1:0 which helped with strong takeoffs. This wasn't just another version of the Chevel. It had special features like the cowl induction hood, which opened up at full throttle to let more air into the engine. Wide racing stripes, big tires, and a mean stance made sure everyone knew this car was built for speed. While other brands had their own big engines, the Chevel SS 454 LS6 was a step ahead. It was the peak of muscle car power before new rules and rising insurance prices started slowing things down. For a short time, the Chevrolet Chevel SS was the king of the street, and its roar is still remembered today. Number 4. 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351. If you want a muscle car that knows how to move, the 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351 is one of the fastest. This car was made to go fast, and it certainly lived up to that promise. Under the hood, it had a 351 cubic inch high-output engine that made 330 horsepower at 5,400 revolutions per minute. This engine was strong and powerful, and it helped the Mustang go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. When it came to racing, the Mustang didn't hold back. It could race down the quarter-mile strip in 14.1 seconds at 100 miles per hour. With a little fine-tuning, it could go even faster, finishing the quarter mile in 13.9 seconds at just over 101 miles per hour. These times were fast enough to compete with the biggest and fastest cars of the time, making the Mustang Boss 351 a true street racer. It also had an auto-light carburetor, which made sure the engine got enough fuel and air to perform its best. But the Mustang Boss 351 wasn't just about power. It also had a well-designed suspension and steering, which made it easier to drive and more comfortable than most muscle cars. The car handled well for its size, and even though it wasn't as light as some sports cars, it was still fun to drive. The powerful engine, combined with its good handling, made the Mustang a great performance car, even if the driver's seat could have offered better visibility. In addition to all that power, the Boss 351 could reach a top speed of 117 miles per hour, making it a true speed machine. It wasn't just fast in a straight line. It could handle corners and curves better than you might expect from a muscle car. With its mix of speed, handling, and power, the 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351 is one of the fastest cars of the 70s. Number 3, 1971 Dodge Charger RT 426 Hemi. The 1971 Dodge Charger RT, with its bold design and amazing power, is one of the fastest muscle cars of the 70s. This car was made to perform, and it did not disappoint. With a 426 cubic inch Hemi engine, it produced 425 horsepower. But it wasn't just about the engine. The Charger RT also had a heavy-duty suspension system, which included extra-duty shock absorbers, torsion bars, and sway bars. These parts were all made to keep the car stable at high speeds. The Hemi engine was an option for the Charger RT, and for an extra $746.50, you could add it to the car. With a high compression ratio of 10.2 to 1 and dual 4-barrel carburetors, the Hemi engine made sure the Charger RT was ready for any challenge. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.7 seconds, which was very fast for a car of its time. On top of that, the Charger RT was also fast in the quarter-mile race. It finished the race in 13.7 seconds, reaching a top speed of 104 miles per hour. This made it one of the fastest muscle cars during the 70s. The car had a strong Dana 60 differential and different rear gear ratios, ranging from 3.23 to 4.10. Drivers could pick the gear ratio that worked best for them. Inside, the Charger RT had a sportier look with a new dashboard, high-back bucket seats, and a tachometer. The Ram Charger functional hood scoop came standard with the HEMI engine, adding extra style and helping the engine perform better. The Charger RT was built for speed and earned its place as one of the fastest muscle cars of the 70s. Number 2, 1970 Mercury Cougar Eliminator. In the late 1960s, Mercury decided to join the muscle car race with their own version of the Cougar. They made the 1970 Cougar Eliminator to compete with cars like the Camaro and Firebird. The name Eliminator came from a show car and a funny car driven by Dino Don Nicholson. Mercury hoped that having a car like this would attract younger buyers who loved fast cars and racing. The Cougar Eliminator came with a powerful engine, starting with a 351 cubic inch V8 that made 290 horsepower. If you wanted more power, you could choose a Boss 302 engine or a Cobra Jet 428 engine, both producing 335 horsepower. The most powerful engine was the Cobra Jet, which had cold air induction, which helped the car go even faster. The engine options made the Eliminator a real performer on the road. In terms of speed, the Eliminator didn't disappoint. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6.7 seconds. It also raced down a quarter mile in 15.2 seconds and reached a top speed of 131 miles per hour. These are impressive numbers for any muscle car. The car was built with a performance handling package, including a rear axle gear ratio that helped with acceleration. The inside of the Cougar Eliminator was sporty and offered many different color choices for the interior. The car came with high-back bucket seats and special features like a tachometer and a Hurst shifter for manual transmissions. For an automatic transmission, the car had a wood-grain shift knob. Also, the exterior of the Eliminator was designed to make it look tough. It had a blacked-out grille, a hood scoop, and racing stripes. The rear of the car had a large spoiler, and the words Eliminator were proudly displayed on the side. These features gave the car a strong racing look, showing it was built for performance. Despite having all the right features, the Eliminator didn't get the same attention as its competitors, like the Mustang or Camaro. In total, only 2,267 Eliminators were made in 1970. While the Cougar Eliminator had the right performance, it didn't have the image to compete with the more famous muscle cars of the time. After that, Mercury focused on making the Cougar a luxury car instead of a muscle car. Number 1, 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda. The Plymouth Barracuda was already a strong muscle car, but when it got the Hemi engine, it became something special. The 1970 Plymouth Hemi Cuda took performance to the next level with its bold design and huge power. It had a big 4-barrel carburetor that helped the car produce 425 horsepower from its 426 cubic inch engine. Well, Plymouth really knew how to make the Hemi Cuda perform. They designed the suspension with heavy-duty parts, including rear leaf springs that could handle all the power and speed. The ride was firm, but the rear suspension was made to stop the tires from bouncing too much, which was a common problem for powerful cars. If you pressed the gas too hard, it wasn't unusual to see the rear tires spinning in smoke. With its Hemi engine, the Cuda could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.6 seconds. That's fast enough to leave most muscle cars behind right off the starting line. The Hemi Cuda wasn't just quick in a straight line. It also did well on the quarter-mile track, finishing in 13.4 seconds at 105 miles per hour. This made it one of the fastest cars of the 70s when it came to acceleration. Speaking of car's interior, the Hemi Cuda had a simple but sporty feel. It had a full set of gauges to help you keep track of how the car was doing, and it even had an optional pistol grip shifter for those who wanted to feel the power in their hands. There was one small problem, though. The car's front end could feel heavy, which made it harder to handle. But if you knew how to drive it, the 1970 Hemi Cuda was a powerhouse on the road. That's a wrap-up for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel